class doesn't start till late, so
okay.
Already after shul.
We are in Lamed Alf Amnalf, the Yermat by V'Hushayeh B'Karen Zavis Arbet Tvachim K'nei Makom. What this means is that I believe it's we're up to.
It's only close to that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe we're a little bit before that. Let me just check. Yeah, that's up to. Now take a look at the pictures. The picture, otherwise this is difficult to explain, but the picture is very easy. This is, we're talking about a case of page Yud Tes Vav, picture Kuf Chav Ches. Okay, in order to, we're talking about a case of an Oris B'Karen Zavis, an Oris on a corner. Obviously, this bottom picture is according to the Rash, where you have 3 trees on one side and 2 trees on the other side. So, in order that we should be able to plant 6 tvachim away from the last tree in the line, which is the shita of Tanakama, or 4 amos away from the last tree in the line, which is the shita of Rabbi Yossi. So, you must have at least 4 tvachim between the oris, between the last vine in the oris and the end of the wall. The reason for that is if that there's less than 4 tvachim between the last vine and the end of the wall, then that whole area is considered to be batel, subordinate to the vine, and therefore you can only start counting the 6 tvachim according to Tanakama, or the 4 amos according to Rabbi Yossi, from the end of the fence and on. Okay? Again, if there's 4 tvachim, then that end of the fence from the last vine till the end of the fence. So then I say the end of that area is not subordinate to the vine, and I can start the meter of the 6 tvachim ticking from the last tree. If, however, the area of that from between the last vine and the end of the fence is less than 4 tvachim, then all that area is considered to be subordinate to the last vine, and then I can only start my meter of 6 tvachim or 4 amos from the end of the fence, not before that. Okay? That's what Gemara is saying here. Vushir b'keren zavis arbet zvachim k'dei makom. Tanin on hacha. Now, we learned over here to Rabbi Yossi that Rabbi Yossi requires 4 amos from the last vine to the beginning of the grain. With Tanin Sazim, we learned to the previous paragraph, Rabbi Yossi holds where you have a vine in a wine press or in a depression, they need 4 amos on all sides in order to allow you to plant. Okay, everybody remembers where we have a single vine in the middle of a wine press, it means a depressed hole in the ground. You need 4 amos on all sides in order to begin planting. Why do we have to mention both opinions of Rabbi Yossi? If you would have just said our case over here, and not that case over there, however, I would have said it's because Oris makes it consider as if it's a full-blown vineyard of 5 trees in the proper arrangement. So therefore, at Amar Asr, I would say that's why here you need 4 amos. Tamon, however, their Aidesha Eno Echosari, since it's only a solitary vine, even though it's in a depression, so I might say it's mutter, you don't need 4 amos, 6 tvachim is enough. Have a tzurcha masnei tamon. So that's why it's necessary to tell us the case over there. If you would have just told us the case over there, would have told us the case over here. Havina Armin, I would have said, tamon, there, perhaps I'd be more machmir, since it's surrounded on all 4 sides, right, by the embankments of the wine press, so therefore maybe there I need more open space. Atamar Aser. Here where the wall's only on 2 sides, right? Because of the corner wall, right? So here I might say, at Omar Mutter, I might not require 4 amos, have a tzurche masna. That's why he had to have the case over here, the tzurche masna tamon, and the case over there as well. Alright, tamon Omar. Now this is a new thing. Tamon means in Bavel. They would say Tamon is over there, right there. Yerushalmi would says Tamon means in Bavel. So right, at Roekilu Shpucha Matechas Tachuba. We're talking about a case where there's a branch of the vine which protrudes out over the oris, and we said in the Mishnah that you draw a plumb line down from there and beneath that, where that plumb line hits, that's where it's also to plant any grain. So in Eretz Yisrael, they would say it a little bit differently. They would say that it's as if you put a metal rod directly down from the branch to the ground. And wherever the metal rod hits, that's where it's also to plant. The Gemara says that is a machlokus between the Bavli and Yerushalmi. Shimon bar Abba b'shem Rabbi Yochanan said, the truth is not a Bavli. I don't think that this appears anywhere in the Bavli. Now that I'm kind of close to finishing the Bavli, I can say with some degree of confidence. I don't remember any study like this in the Bavli. So Shimon bar Abba b'shem Rabbi Yochanan said, Amokum shu nikman. You know what? Even if you have a plumb line with the weight at the end, it's what you call it a little bit. Swings, oscillates, right? A good word, SAT word. It oscillates a little bit back and forth, right? So since it oscillates a little bit back and forth, so that the area in which it oscillates, according to the Yerushalmi, according to the Amoroi Meretz Yisrael, is also. The Bavli takes a ramrod line directly down, not taking into account any oscillation. Okay, so there is a slight machlokus here. Okay, Rabbi Yochanan Book of Hashem Rabbi Yossi ben Chanina said, "Tachas eshkolos oser mekadesh." I mean, a grapevine under the, although you're not allowed to plant on an area of the grapevine, but what makes it oser ba'ana? Only if it's planted, only if the grain is planted directly underneath a cluster of grapes. Tachas ha'alin lo, not if it's planted under leaves. It's an interesting distinction. I mean, I don't think there's any botanical distinction between something which is planted on the cluster, planted under the leaves, but it's it's just what looks like, since all Marisayan here in Kilayim anyway, so what looks like it, right? Even though that grain which grows under the leaves is also osir and is mekadesh. In other words, it's forbidden to derive any pleasure from it. New parak. Yes.
Whereas the Bible usually refers to the Yerushalmi as Ma'arava.
Right.
Here it's just, like a direction. Here it's there.
Right. I don't think it ever says like the Mizracha or something like that. No, I don't think so. Okay. Now we have a new issue, which is a runner in the ground. There might be a fancier English word for that, but you have a tree, and you take a branch, a grapevine, take a branch, stick it back into the ground, and then it grows as a vine some distance away. Okay? So I don't know any fancy English word for it. Let's call it a runner. Okay? You don't have your English Kilayim with you, do you? So anyway, that's what I think. You have a runner which grows on the ground. Now take a look at the pictures. Flip side of that page it should be. You see a picture of a runner on top. So in the top picture, if you have 3 tfachim over the root, see that? So you have 3 tfachim over the root in the middle where the root is at its deepest point, so you can plant grain, because as we mentioned several times already, that it's only if underground the gap of 3 tfachim is sufficient to make it ois kilayim, okay, to take it out of the category of kilayim. However, if there isn't 3 tfachim of ground separating the vine from the grain, lo yavi zera, you're not allowed to plant any grain there. Even if you put the runner through a dried gourd, or through a pipe of pottery. Why? Because a gourd, in other words, you put the runner so it wouldn't sprout out somewhere in the middle. You put it through a gourd, which is like a pipe, or through an actual pipe. It doesn't matter. Since those are considered to be porous materials, so therefore you still need to have stick of 3 tfachim. The difference that Shemara will discuss, of course, is where you ran it through what kind of pipe? A metal pipe. Because the metal pipe is not considered porous. Okay? Hibricha b'sela. What if the runner is going through rocks, through stone? It's both. Even though there's only a gap of 3 at both between the grain, 3 finger breadths between the grain and the vine, the vine's roots. That's okay. You're allowed to plant grain there. If you have you have this case in Arkuva literally means a knee. So here you see that there's actually a knee, so to speak, which is where the runner comes out of the first tree to go back underground. So that Akuva Shebegefen, Mutter Lahavi, A Modedim El Mikroshen, we only measure from the second root. And from this we understand that we measure the 6 tvachim of distance from the second root, meaning where it comes out of the ground. We're going to discuss that in the Gemara if that's exactly the case. Lo Yavi Zara Leha. It sounds like when it says you're not allowed to plant grain directly over the root, Haminatzad Mutter. If it's slightly to the side, if the root was running like this on the ground, so slightly to the side on this side, slightly to the side on that side, you're allowed to plant grain. Okay, it's only directly over the root, directly over the runner, I should call it, that you're not allowed to plant the grain. So that's what are we talking about? Manan Kayam, but what are we talking about? What's the issue here? Are we afraid that the Mishnah, in general, our questions about the Mishnah, are we afraid of the concept of grafting? In other words, that the grain is going to go down, or whatever seed is going to go down, strike a root into the grapevine, and graft onto the grapevine? Is that the problem we're concerned about? If that's the problem we're concerned about, a problem of grafting, that don't speak specifically about grapevines, and we know that all trees are also to graft, not just grapevines, all trees are forbidden in grafting. If the issue here is not grafting, but rather the general principle that you must distance yourself somewhat from vineyards, right? That vineyards and grain cannot grow in close proximity. Then where do we get the shiur of 3 tvachim? Now, of course, we are very smart. We already know the shiur of 3 tvachim because we came across it earlier in the Masechta. But the Yerushalmi here is starting from ground zero. It doesn't take into account the fact we found it earlier. So ask me, where did I ever see 3 tvachim? What kind of distances have I seen? 6 tvachim, right? So where does 3 come from? If it's the standard distance, and this Neshisha should be 6 tvachim. Ela could Rabbi Akiva. So maybe it's like Rabbi Akiva. The Rabbi Akiva Amar Shlosh, because Rabbi Akiva we had seen earlier holds that the distance from a grapevine is not 6, but rather 3. Says more Ink Rabbi Akiva. It's like Rabbi Akiva. Afilu min atzadis Neshlosha. So it shouldn't be mutter if it's slightly to the east, west, north, or south of the runner. It should have to be 3 tvachim to the east, west, north, or south of the runner, right? Says more again, Ik Rabbi Akiva, feel mina tzadis lishlosha. Rabbi Yerushalmi Rabbi Chia bar Abba said, Mishum zroim al gabi gefen. No, it's a new concept, in a chinami. When the zroim are on top of the gefen, and the gefen's on the ground, then what's the shiur of archaka? What's the shiur of distance? A new concept. 3 tvachim, and it's only directly up, not sideways. You're right, it's a new concept. This is the first time we come across it. Actually, we came across it earlier, first time we come across it in the Mishnah. Okay? Now, ask more on this, ask more on this premise. That Tamontanina, we learned about Basra. Marchigim, it says, Roim es ha-machresha. This is our halacha not based on Kilayim, but based on the concept of Nizkei Shchenim. I can't damage your property. Now, if I plant a tree in close proximity to your wall, it starts ruining your wall, right? The roots start breaking down your wall, right? So a month ago, we learned over there, I have to distance my seeds, my plowing, and my urinal, at least 3 tvachim. All these things have the capacity to wear down your wall. The planting, the plowshare, the plowing, and the urinating. Rabbi Yirmiyah Amar Ukva Makshe, he asked the question based on this quote from Basra. Tamonat Amar, Tamon means here. Even though Tamon usually means there's one in many cases Yerushalmi where Tamon means here. Tamonat Amar Einar Shoshi Malchim Natzad. In our sugya, you're not afraid of the roots spreading in all directions. We say only directly under the runner is over the runner is usher, but not in any to the slightly to east, west, north, or south of the runner. Yet there we're afraid if you plant within 3 tvachim of the wall, roots are going to start spreading in all directions. What's the difference? Why there am I assuming they're going to start spreading in all directions? It's not here. Here you say here do you say that there, I'm sorry, here, but really there. There you're saying that the roots do go all over the place. How do we reconcile Bola Basra with Kilayim? True, but the question is whether the underlying principle. What about the underlying principle? The underlying principle is a botanical one. You're right, the manifestations are different halachas. But since the underlying question is a metzius of how botanically the roots grow, so it seems to be a contradiction in our concept of botany. That's what's bothering us. Because here where we say roots only grow due out straight and then we grow in all directions.
Here you're destroying the wall, and here are the roots going to destroy the.
So it says Maram Rabbi Yossi, Kan v'kan ein ha-shoshim malachim min hatzad. The truth is roots always grow straight. The roots of the grapevine always go straight. However, what they do is they cause the ground to crumble in their vicinity. So therefore, by Kisui Adam, Anyota B'Sech the Beitza, they make loose dirt. They malkin ariso shakoso, which damages the foundation, the ground of the wall. So the root will grow if you plant the vine the right way. And I don't know how you figure this out because we're not botanists. But if you plant the vine the right way, the root is going to grow parallel to the wall, not towards the wall, because roots only grow in one direction. However, even though that is the case, the root itself, its presence, starts breaking down because it draws moisture and all whatever it does there. It loosens the dirt, and that's what the problem is, right? I'll bring you proof for that. The Tanina it says over there, Meraglaim, you're not allowed to urinate within 3 tvachim of your friend's wall, right? Meraglaim malchim min hatzad. Do Meraglaim go sideways? No. But what do Meraglaim do? They make the ground more breakable, I guess more fragile. And that's where they're a problem. Okay? Hasiv Rabbi Yossi Bar Bun. Rabbi Yossi Bar Bun asked a kasha, but here it's a kasha not against, but rather a kasha to support the premise we just said. He asked a kasha which supports the premise we just presented. He asked on the subsequent part of the Gemara Bava Basra, the Mishnah Bava Basra, it says, "V'atznida machresha." There it says plow. You're not allowed to plow within 3 tvach in the wall. Obviously not plowing to the wall, right? You're planting parallel to the wall, not up to the wall. So why is the rest of the plan within 3 tvachim of the wall? It must be because it creates a bad environment, a weaker environment around the wall, not because it actually damaged, you'd actually hit the wall itself. So to here, the Gemara says, really roots grow straight. And that's why you can plant a little bit to the right, to the north, a little bit to the south, a little bit to the east, a little bit to the west of your underground runner. The only time it's also is directly up and top. Okay? Directly above, it has to be distant at least 3 tvachim. Alright, new thing. The Mishnah said, even if you put it through a pipe of, through a dry gourd, through a pottery pipe, it's still usher. So the Gemara says, like we mentioned before, that's only Basilon Shel Cheres, in a pottery pipe. Basilon Shel Avar, but he put it into a lead pipe. You might get lead poisoning, however, you don't need 3 tvachim offering milamala of dirt on top. What do you need? Only the 3 etzbos, like before. Right. That's really the raya. It's a parallel. However, you should know, when you put it through stone, that's by tough stone. Or it's one piece of stone, which is tough. But if you put it in through soft stone, so then it should be mispatachasi. It just expands the stone and breaks it, and then you need the same 3 tvachim. Says where V'haibish Eina Rishon Nires. This is going on the next part of the Mishnah. The next part of the Gemara said that you only need 6 tvachim from where the runner emerges. That's where the beginning of the runner is not to be seen. If the beginning of the runner, the first part, was to be seen, give 6 tvachim to each side. Now, in other words, if you take a look at the pictures, in picture Kuf Lamed, you have to give 6 tvachim from where the runner enters the ground, because where the runner enters the ground is visible, right? In picture Kuf Lamed Av, where the runner enters the ground is invisible, right? Because underneath the ground, and therefore you only give 6 tvachim from where the runner emerges from the ground. Okay? Says the Gemara, Teil Choshukein. You should know this is true. That's Ninon. We learned the Basra subsequently in our parak, in other words, in the next Mishnah. Hamavrich Shlosha Kfani v'Karei Nirim. It says if you run three vines into the ground, and you can see the place where they enter the ground. You need 6 tvachim where they enter the ground as well. The tiny law we learned by Medvar Moilin and Kerem. Whatever we're talking about later on is about a vineyard. In terms of avodah, wherever both sides are visible, you have to give 6 tvachim for both sides. Okay, aloha base. Hamar Shlosha Kfanim v'Kareim Nirim. This is a case which we were just discussing before. Then, this case, the last picture in the Masechta, Kuf Lamed Beis. See Kuf Lamed Beis? What? Good sign, right? It is. I am assuming it's a good sign. Yeah. So in Kuf Lamed Beis, you need 6 tvachim, of course, from both sides. The shaila is here, however, is a more fundamental question. Is this a vineyard? Why should it be a vineyard? Because you have 2 rows.
They're extensions of the original.
That's the shaila, right? So what do we say here? Right? You can see where they went into the ground still.
Eventually, they the connection to the original plant.
I guess not. I mean, we still have about 10 blot left to go. 12 blot, but I don't think so. The last 4 blot, by the way, have to do a shot now, so we only have 8 blot left to kill your counter. Yes. I'm pretty sure it does have Orla, but I'm not sure. I'm sure we'll get to it when we get them stuff Orla. Right, 2-tier Orla system. That's right. Pi is only Orla midrabanan, but I'm pretty sure there is Orla because of my sign. So in this case, Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Tzadok Omer says, if there's a normal shiur of a kerem between the 2 rows, between 4 and 8 amos, then they are a vineyard. So what if it's the same tree? It's a vineyard. And if not, if it doesn't have the proper shiur, it's too close, within 4 amos, or too far, further than 8 amos apart, Einam mitzdarvis and am mitzdarvis. Kevin Shiyovsha. What if you have a vine which became dried up and shriveled? So Asuri is still not allowed to plant in its vicinity, midrabana, but it doesn't make whatever's planted in its vicinity asur b'dar mano, of course, because it is a dead grapevine, so therefore can't make it asur. Rameir Omer, amazing chumrah, after geffen asur, v'enim mekadosh. You're not allowed to plant anything within the 6 tvachim of a cotton bush. Semer geffen is cotton, because it looks like grapevines. Now I don't know. I went to yeshiva for 3 years on a kibbutz where they grow cotton, and if you ask me what a cotton plant looks like, I couldn't tell you. But allegedly, is that strange?
I had a project.
I actually used to. Yes.
To make a cotton plant. And I remember distinctly, it wasn't vines. It was like shooting straight up with flowers, and in the middle of this flower was, and it was not a cluster. Okay. Right, it was not a cluster. It was like here. It's not a cluster. It just doesn't look like a grapevine.
I don't know. I guess they grow similarly. Otherwise, Semer Geffen, which is modern Hebrew, which means cotton, is not what Termer Geffen meant in the Gemara. That is possible. That is possible. But I'm assuming it is. So in any event, even that's Marasayan. It makes it also plants vicinity, but it doesn't make of course, doesn't make Kilei Kerem if he did plant in its vicinity. He says in the name of Rabbi Meir, Af al gabe agefen osir eino mekadosh. Even on top of the grapevine is forbidden, but it doesn't make it osir by Noah. And the Gemara is going to ask what this line means. It's cryptic. It's impossible to understand from the Mishnah itself. Be that as it may, elu asurim v'lo mekadosh. In the following cases, it's osir to plant, but it doesn't make b'di'evet. It doesn't make the produce osir by Noah. Moser churban hakerem. Now the halacha is if you had 3 rows, each separate by 8, and in the middle row got destroyed, and now you have a separation of 16. So the halacha is you this itself 4 amos from each side, and you plant the middle 8 amos. But what about b'di'evet? If you planted within those 4 amos at a distance of 6 tvachim from the tree, but you didn't distance yourself 4 amos, the full 4 amos. So b'di'evet, that stuff is mutter. Okay? What?
What does Moser mean, the leftover?
I apologize, I made a big mistake just now. Sorry, I made a big mistake. Let me do that over again. We're talking about a case where you have less than 16 amos. The 4 amos are definitely osir. I apologize. The 4 amos are sure osir because the achok of 4 amos, you must distance yourself from a vineyard. So that's necessary. From a single tree, it's 6 tvachim. From a vineyard, it's 4 amos. We're talking about where here's a row of grapevines, and here's a row of grapevines, and between the two, there's less than 16 amos. Let's say there's 15 amos. So you're not allowed to plant anything here at all. You need to have at least 16 amos between the rows. What happens if b'di'evet you did plant in the middle 7 amos? Not the 4 on each side. Not 7. The middle 7, right. Not the 4 over here, not the 4 over here. Here, in this 4 and this 4, even if you plant the b'di'evet, it's also. Well, you plant the middle 7, even though you weren't supposed to, if you did, it's not also. That's what you're meaning. That's Moser Churban HaKerem. What's left over in the Churban HaKerem after you took off the 4 on each side, even though you weren't supposed to plant it because it wasn't the minimum of 8 in the middle, nonetheless it doesn't become Moser Bano. Similarly, Moser Mochel HaKerem. Mochel HaKerem, he says, where you have a wall over here, and you have the grapevines over here, you're supposed to have 12 amos between the grapevines and the wall in order to plant. What if you only had 11 amos? And 11 amos, and you distance yourself 4 amos, and you planted the last 7 amos over here. So again, this is really also, you're not supposed to do that, right? But b'di'evet, however, if you did it, it doesn't answer those 7 amos. Okay? So too, Moser Piskei Oris. We said before that you're supposed to, when you have between 2 arasim, you're supposed to have 8 amos and a va'od. Said yes, it's the only time you have the word va'od, meaning extra tefach. What if you didn't have the extra va'od? So b'di'evet, whatever's over 6 tefachim, because in Oris is not like a full-blown vineyard, so therefore you only need 6 tefachim. Well, b'di'evet, what's more than 6 tefachim away from the last vine on either side is okay. And the same thing, mutar apipirus. In the case over there we said where you have the trellis, and it will eventually extend, but it hasn't extended yet. So b'di'evet, that which is at least 6 tvachim away from whatever's growing is not also. Avotachas hagefen, but that which is underneath the grapevine, va'avoidas hagefen, that which is within the 6 tvachim distance from a single grapevine, va'arba amos shebekerem, and that which is in the 4 amos, this is what you need from a vineyard. Harei lumekachin. In all these cases, the whatever grows there is also bad. No, it must be burnt. Okay? I'm Rabbi Lezer. A single geffen is 6. Rabbi Akiva said 3, but we passed in 6. I'm Rabbi Lezer. Rabbi Lezer said, halacha, the halacha which halacha the Yerushalmi doesn't say, but the halacha of a dry grapevine being also because of Marasayin. Now allow to plant in the proximity of a shriveled up dry vine because of Marasayin, the Rabbi Meiri. That's going like Rabbi Meir. It's Rabbi Meir's chumrah. Rabbi Meir is machmir by cotton. He's machmir this as well. It says more nicho b'sisva. I understand this chumrah Marasayin in the winter, where all trees look dry. So people want to be able to see between a dry dead tree and a dry live tree, right? Because all trees look dry. What? Stop its fall. But I mean, when after stuff falls off the tree. Avo beketa, but what about in the summer? Right? Why he asked it in the summer? There's a major difference in the summer. In the summer, one is full of leaves and one is dead. So there's more Isasi the Matra and Tarfain. There's some places where the leaves fall off, Hafilu Bakaito, even in the middle of the summer. So therefore, he made a Marasayin even in the middle of the summer. Okay? Rabbi Shmuel b'Shem Rabbi Zira. Now we go to that. Now we're going to explain that cryptic phrase in our Mishnah. We had a cryptic phrase that said that Rabbi Lezer Tzog Sanim Ramer Afal Gabi Agefen Aser Ve'eno Mekadosh. And we didn't understand what that meant. So now we're going to have two explanations of that. Rabbi Shmuel b'Shem Rabbi Zira said, Al Gabi Zmora he must nisa. This is talking about when you have less than 3 tvachim. This is the case that you had in previous Mishnah. We have the runner in the ground. It's supposed to have 3 tvachim between the runner and the grain on top of it, right? So what if he didn't have the 3 tvachim? So that's what it's talking about. But the Yeved, it's not also. L'chatchila, you need this is a 3 tvachim. But the Yeved, it's not also. That's one interpretation, okay? Al Gabi's Mori Mastisa on the runner in the ground. Rabbi Pun b'Shem Bar Chia b'Shem Shmuel Bar Rabbi Yitzchak said another interpretation. L'avir asora he mastisa. This is talking about where where the grain is growing above. I guess you need a lower field in order to really imagine this. You have a lower field of grapevines here, and you have a higher field of grain, and the grain is growing out of the fields on an angle above the grapevines. So, and there's a separation of 10 tefachim between the two. No, it's not. No, there isn't separation. Apologize. Within 10 tefachim the two. So in that case, we say it's usher, but it's not usher bano. Again, it's growing within the airspace of the grapevines. I assume the same thing vice versa as well. If the grapevines are going over, no. In the other case, it's more chomer. In the case of the grapevines are growing over the grain, so then we say the grain is also bano and you must burn it. This is talking about specifically where the grain is growing over the grapevines. So there I say it's also to do, but b'diavad you don't have to burn the grain or the grapevines. I'm not sure what the difference is. I just know that we learned earlier today that the opposite case you have to burn it. That was the end of the last parak. The end of the last parak said if something is growing under, we had a machlokas is going under the eshkolos or even under the alim, but we said that in that case also a mekadesh. This is clearly talking about only where the grain is growing over the vines and not the vines growing over the grain. The reason this is probably so, I'm thinking as I'm going along, the reason this is probably so is because here we have to say, in other words, where grapevines grow over grain, they form a canopy. Because the tree has a halacha of a canopy. So therefore, anything which grows under the canopy becomes ulcer. But grain has no concept of canopy, right? It's not really a canopy. There's no such thing as a canopy formed by grain, because grain doesn't grow in such a fashion. If it does create a canopy, it's an artificial concept. And therefore, the canopy created by the grain over the grapevines is an artificial concept, which only asks the Rabbanon, it doesn't ask me the Raisa to make a Kili Akera. I just saw that thrown on the spot. I don't know if it's true, it's not true, but it sounds very, very good. If I say so myself. Okay, says more further. Rabbi Yisrael says along these lines, Havin on Savrin, Kerem Yeshlo Avir. Originally I thought that the concept of a vineyard having airspace is unique unto a vineyard. Okay? How a Gevin Yechidis, but a single grapevine, Ein Lo Avir, doesn't have any airspace. Doesn't have the concept of airspace. Mimada Amar Rabbi Bun Bar Chia b'Shem Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yitzchak. However, that which Rabbi Bun Bar Chia named Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yitzchak, which you just learned, said, La'avir Asoro Imastisa. There are missions talking about where grain is going over the airspace of a grapevine, and here it's talking about a single grapevine, because the mission said Al Gabe Gefen, not Al Gabe Kerem, said Al Gabe Gefen, even a single grapevine. For this I have to deduce that the concept of airspace going up and catching the grain over it applies even to a single grapevine, not just to a vineyard. Okay? Says the one further. Mosar Mochla Kerem Arbamos. Now, have we done 2 blocks by the way? Not quite. Okay. Yeah, we're going to go past the Mishnah. But the next Gemara until the Mishnah is murder. Just so I let you know about that. Okay? Mosar Mochel HaKerem Arba Armus. This is a quote from our Mishnah. We said that actually the Mosar Mochel HaKerem is that which is beyond. Mosar Mochel HaKerem is a quote from our Mishnah, and that's Arba Armus. In other words, you have the Mochel HaKerem over here. Here's the raw vines. Here's the fence. Anything beyond the 4 amos, the 7 amos, even though you're not supposed to plant to them, but b'diavad it does nasr. So that's the Mosar Mochel HaKerem. This extra 7 amos, it doesn't become nasr b'diavad. L'chatchila shouldn't plant there, b'diavad it does not become nasr. Okay? Says the Gemara, Mosar Churban HaKerem Arba. It's the same thing by Mosar Churban HaKerem. That's this case over here, where you had 50 ounces between the two. You're not supposed to plant there, as long as you had 4 amos on either side, so then the 7 amos in the middle don't become awesome. Okay? Moser Piskei Oris. We mentioned in the Mishnah that there's a concept of Piskei Oris. To make that easier, maybe you can find the picture for me. It's on the flip side, don't flip very far. Well, let's just look at the picture. And picture Kuf Chav. Was it Kuf Chav Vav? Yeah. Picture Kuf Chav Vav, right? So you're supposed to have 8 amos and va'od and a tefach between the two are racing, right? If you don't have that, it's also to plant there. However, if you ever have, you did plant there. So since these are not true vineyards, they're only aracim. So then the shiur, which is actually mekadesh, which actually comes us, but no, it's only 6 tvachim on each side. Anything which is more than 6 tvachim away from the first vine in either direction doesn't become osher b'diavad. Again, by regular vineyard, the minimal distance in order that it should be osher by no is 4 amos. By a single grapevine, the minimum shiur is 6 tvachim. Here, since the Oris is only a quasi vineyard, so the shiur remains 6 tvachim. Right? And that's why, even if you didn't have the proper distance, which is 8 amos in a tefach, say you only had 7 amos, right? Let's say you had only 7 amos. So how much is that actually osir? So 6 tvachim is 1.5 amos, right? So 7 minus 3 means that that 3 of them are osir, 1.5 on each side, and the 4 in the middle are mutter. Okay? Okay? So says the Gemara, the same thing, motor apipirus shisha tvachim. And apipirus is also where we have those, that case over there, kuf chav hey, that's also not really a vineyard, right? So it's only that we ask her because the rest it might eventually spread over the rest of them and be an awning, a canopy over the grain. So therefore, in this case also, as long as the grain underneath the rest of the apipirus is in fact more than 6 tvachim away from where the grapevine's end, so then b'diavad it's okay. Okay? That was all easy. Now comes our part. Bein hasayim ma'u. In between. What's the halacha? Now, this case of in between is talking about a case where All right. Let's remember a basic principle in order to explain this. Where you have just a vineyard of 2 rows, what's the max? In other words, you have, let's say, the minimum 5. What's the maximum distance you can have between the rows? 8 amos. When you have a larger vineyard, say of 9, what's that? In 3 rows, what's the maximum difference you can have between the rows? 16. That's right. Again, when it's only 2 rows, that's called a kerem cotton. The maximum distance between the rows in order that it still be considered a vineyard is 8 amos. Where you have 3 rows, the maximum difference between the rows and it should still be considered a vineyard goes all the way up to 16. Okay? Now we said if you have 3 rows of 16, 3 rows, each of which is 16 apart. Let's say we have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And between each of these is 16 amos. Okay? In this case, you're not supposed to plant in those 16 amos. Not supposed to, because this is all considered to be part and parcel of a vineyard. Right? Because it's just a large vineyard. What happens if he did plant there? He planted in these 6 amos between the 2. Beinasayim Mao. So Rabbi Yechon Amar. Now, of course, we're not talking about within the first 4 amos. That's obviously also. Talking about you planted the middle 8 amos in each one, right? And he weren't supposed to because this is a large vineyard, right? So you can't say, well, these 16 amos are going to plant in the middle. It's a large vineyard, it's also to plant. What if you planted nonetheless? So we have machlokas. Rabbi Yochanan Osir Mekadesh. Rabbi Yochanan says it's forbidden, but it's not Mekadesh. Says more. Now, what case are we talking about? Mana. Well, generally, our assumption if it's Einu Mekadesh, it's only the Rabbanan, not the Raisa. Okay, Manavshach. What are we talking about? Kerem Gadolu. What are we talking about in our Mishnah? What are we talking? I think we're asking that. Second. No. We're asking Rosh Hashanah and Reish Lakish. According to Reish Lakish, who says it's also very Mekadesh. What are we talking about? Are we talking about Kerem Gadol, who we're talking about a large vineyard, like I said over here? Lamali Churbano. Then you know what? It's our Mishnah. If you're correct, Reish Lakish, then in this case it's also very Mekadesh. And this is talking about a regular case where you have a large vineyard. So why did our Mishnah speak about Mosar Churban HaKerem and say that in a case where there was 15 amos across and you're not supposed to plant, you planted just the middle 7, you planted the middle 7. It's not Osir. Tell me, don't talk about a Churban HaKerem. Churban HaKerem means where there originally was a row here in the middle. And that row got taken away. Right? That's called Churban HaKerem. Don't tell me about Churban HaKerem, which is a non-prevalent case. Talk about a regular classic case. Talk about a large vineyard where you had 16 amos, where it's also the plant, but B'di'evi did plant its mutter. In other words, our Mishnah spoke about Churban HaKerem, where he started over the vineyard which had a vineyard which was 8 amos across. Only 8 amos between the trees, and 1 row got taken away. Don't talk about a Churban HaKerem. Your same halacha applies by a classic kerem. That even though you're not allowed to plant the 8 amos in the middle, but the evidence if you did plant them, it's okay. So why not talk about a classic case? Manavshach kerem gadalu lamali churbano. So if it's talking about even the principle applies like you say, Rish Lakish. Even in this case, why is our Mishnah talking about a churban where there was a row in the middle which got knocked down or something? Afilu mat also Tika talk about a classic case. Now, kerem kotanu. If you're going to say that our Mishnah is talking about a small kerem, so Rish Lakish maybe will say no. Our Mishnah is talking about a churban kerem was originally a kerem which had 8 amos between each row. And that's why it's talking about Korban HaKerem. It's talking about case where it's originally up to 8 ounces between each row. And that's why the Mishnah is talking about the Korban HaKerem. And it's saying about, let's say it had not 8 ounces between each row, but 7 ounces between each row. And now after the middle row is destroyed, how much you have between each row? Only 14, right? And now you want to plant those 14, you're not allowed to. But if you didn't plant, then the middle 6 are okay. 4 ounces each side is also the middle 6 are okay. So maybe that's how you want to touch the Mishnah Reish Lakish. The Amish is talking specifically about Kerem Kotzon, where Chorav, the middle, got destroyed. Says more, I'll prove to you that can't be either. If it's talking about Kerem Kotzon, Elo Machol. If it's talking about Kerem Kotzon, there's no concept of Machol HaKerem. Now this is something which I think we might have had earlier in the Masechta, I forgot it. So let's assume it's new. Here. In this case, originally it started being Kerem Kotzon. That means it had 8, we'll draw 6 trees for simplicity's sake, had 8 amos between each row. In this case, says the Gemara, there's no concept of Mochel HaKerem. Our Mishnah is talking about Mochel HaKerem, where you have 12 amos over here. What's that look? If you didn't have the proper 12 amos, but rather only had 11 amos. And now we said that the first 4 amos are osir, but the next 7 we said are okay. These are no good, but these are okay. Says Gemara, the concept of Mochel HaKerem cannot apply in this Kerem by definition. Because if this is only 8 amos between the rows, you cannot consider a 12 amma gap to the wall to be part and parcel of the Kerem. That's a paradox. Where can I say that a 12 amma gap to the wall is considered to be part and parcel of the vineyard and is also where these are 16 amos across? Because then I say, well, 16 means 4 and 8 in the middle. So what happens if you only have 1 on the side and the other side of wall? So it takes away 4. What's the Mochel HaKerem? 12 amos, right? And anything less than 12 amos is forbidden to plant there. But if this is 8, so it's a paradox to say, well, between the vineyard vines are only 8 amos. But on this side, where there's a wall, I'm going to ask her up to 12 amos. That's being more machmir between a wall and a row of vines than between 2 vines. That cannot be. It's a logical conundrum. Okay? So the Gemara is saying, our Mishnah is speaking about the concept of Mochel HaKerem. The concept of Mochel HaKerem can't exist in a minimal sized Kerem. It can only exist in a Kerem which has 16 amos between the rows. Okay? Again, it's a basic axiom. It can't be more chamor between the row of vines and the wall than between the 2 rows of vines themselves. So if this is 8 amos between the vines, then there can't be a Mochel HaKerem. The only way that can be a Mochel HaKerem is if there's 16 amos between the vines, then I can say, and between the vines and the wall, 12 amos is the minimal shiur, but not where there's 8 amos. So says the more Reish Lakish, you can't learn our Mishnah that it's going on a Kerem Kotzon, because it's talking about Kerem Kotzon. Kerem Kotzon, ain't no machol, there's no din of machol. So what are we talking about in our Mishnah? Says the Gemara, I'll tell you what it's talking about in our Mishnah. Elo ki onan kayamin. What it's talking about in our Mishnah? Bekerem Gadol, it's a large Kerem in that it has more than 2 rows. It's got 3 rows. However, Shanota Amata Kerem Kotzon, it's got only 8 amos between each row. That's the case we're talking about. We're talking about in our Mishnah, it had 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, in between each of which was 8 amos. And here's the machol over here. No. Can't anywhere between 8 and 16, right? Okay? The truth is you have a minimum of 4. The minimum is 4, I think, if I recall correctly, between vines. No, for Kerem Kotzon. It's still the same minimum. It just has a larger maximum. Okay, it's a larger maximum. Right. Okay, so says well, that's the case. So in that case, if that's the case, says Gemara, Rabbi Zero, this teaches us that Kerem Gadol Shenata Shmona. If you have a Kerem Gadol where it is 8 by 8, the next word is a major typo. It should be Yesh Lo Machol. It's got a Machol. In other words, the way you just explained the Mishnah according to Reish Lakish, by definition, you are Mechadish. That this is the case we're talking about. A case where it started out being a large Kerem, where things were close together like a small Kerem. And that's why we talk about Kerem Shechorav, right? Because it's talking about where you eliminated this middle row, and you had it really wasn't 16, a little bit less than 16, right? So this will have to be like 7.5 and 7.5, but the same idea, right? So you had a middle row which got obliterated, and now you're not supposed to plant here in the middle because it's less than 16. But if you planted, so the middle, whatever it is not also. In this case, says Rabbi Zira, since our Mishnah is talking about a Kerem Gadol, which is Natua Kerem Gadol, it teaches us that in this case, you have a Mochel HaKerem. Hi, it's a paradox. Because between each vine is only 8 amos, and between the vines and the wall, there must be 12 amos. It's not a paradox. Because since it's a large Kerem, it has the potential of a spread of 16 amos between each row. Hi, you didn't plant it that way. That's your prerogative. You don't have to plant that way. But since you had the prerogative of planting with a distance of up to 16 amos between the rows, that means that it has the Mochel HaKerem, which is less severe of 12 amos. Again, in a small Kerem where the vines cannot be, since there are only 2 rows, the vines cannot be farther apart than 8 amos. Therefore, there is no Mochel HaKerem of 12 amos, because that would make between the vines and the wall more severe than between the 2 rows of vines. That's not logical. But here, even though they're in a large Kerem, which is planted at the intervals of a small Kerem, it's true. You only have in practice 8 amos between each row of vines, but Lamaisa, you had the license to have 16 amos between each row of vines and still have it considered to be a Kerem. Therefore, since you had that license, those 12 amos over there, those 12 amos are a Mochel HaKerem. Again, it takes account what you could have done, and therefore there's a concept of Mochel HaKerem.
You can't plant within the 12 amos until the fence. Make it also for you.
Unless they're more than 12, that's right. Even though here they're only 8, here the shiur is 12. Again, because we look at what he could have done hypothetically, not what you could have done in practice. Okay? Says more further. You ready to go further? In Tamar, Mato Sheshes Al Sheshes Rei Tocho Osur Umikadesh Chutzo Umikadesh. That fits into Barzil, and that goes to the husband. The inner part. Just a second, I forgot how to learn this line. This is going now Rabbi Yechanan. It's still the same issue. When we're proving that according to Rabbi Yechanan, also our mission is talking about a Kerem cotton, that a Kerem Gadol that you planted at the spacing of a Kerem cotton. He has it. But if it's a situation where what? The interrupt so the Yerushalmi too far back, right? You can't even see the inner part, and therefore you can't see the upper whatever, so therefore you're high free. Yeah, okay. I told you it's hard. You proved according to Ray. It's doubly hard when you're falling asleep. I know. Listen. Sorry. You warned us ahead of time. If you're this we prove now according to Reish Lakish has got to be the case. We ask according to Reish Lakish if in a regular Kerem, if it's talking about why am I starting? We prove according to Reish Lakish talking about a large Kerem at intervals of a small Kerem. How do we prove that? We said because according to Reish Lakish, otherwise we should tell you about a large Kerem plant intervals of a large kerem, it's talk about Churban HaKerem, talk about a regular kerem. Because Rabbi talk about the original kerem. Because according to Reish Lakish, just like by kerem shechorav, you don't answer the middle section as long as there's 4 amos on either side. So too by kerem gadol, you don't answer the middle section whatever's more than 4 amos from either side. So we ask Kasha, if we're talking about according to Reish Lakish, so don't talk about kerem shechorav, talk about a large kerem. So that Reish Lakish said, no, our mission is talking about a kerem cotton, and therefore if it's talking about a kerem gadol, a large kerem which was planted at intervals of kerem cotton, and therefore had there not been a Churban HaKerem, then I would have said that of course whatever is planted between these two is also even b'di'evet. Why? Because there's less than 4 amos from either tree, right? So therefore it's also even b'di'evet. That's why it says Reish Lakish, our mission is talking about a case where it's a Churban HaKerem. Okay? Why is it talking about a Churban HaKerem? Again, in order to have a case where there's going to be okay b'di'evet, because there's more than 4 amos to either one, because there's no middle row in between the two which are still standing. Now we have to prove, according to Rabbi Yochanan, that our mission is also talking about the same scenario, about a kerem gadol which is planted at intervals of kerem cotton. How do we prove that according to Rabbi Yochanan? This is a little bit even more difficult. Rabbi Yochanan holds, going back to where Yochanan holds, Rabbi Yochanan holds in a classic big kerem, 1 row of trees, 16 amos, another row of trees. The entire area between each row of trees is Mekadesh. This is a chumrah which he said before, that if you have, then when we started talking about the issue of Bein Asayim, Rabbi Yochanan said the whole kula of our Mishnah of the Churban HaKerem being mutter b'di'evet doesn't apply where it was a classic large kerem. There, the entire 16 amos between each vine is considered to be Mekadesh. There's no area between the two vines which is even mutter b'di'evet. That's Rabbi Yochanan saying. So says the Gemara, if that's the case, we understand that Rabbi Yochanan also has to learn the Mishnah like Reish Lakish. That's why about a case where it was a kerem gadol, which is planted at intervals of kerem cotton and then was chorav. Why is that? Very simply. If it's talking about a kerem gadol originally planted at intervals of 16 amos, then there's no mutter b'di'evet. Our Mishnah is trying to find a scenario where it's mutter b'di'evet, whatever's planted between the two rows. If Rabbi Yochanan holds in a case where there's 16 amos between the rows in a large kerem to begin with, there's nothing which is mutter b'di'evet. Everything has to go up in smoke. Everything is also b'anoah. What's the scenario in which Rabbi Yochanan can learn that you're going to have now a space between two rows where it's going to be mutter b'di'evet? Of course, obviously we have to talk about kerem gadol, because then there's nothing to talk about chorav. Chorav by definition implies there were 3 rows to begin with, one of which is now missing. So therefore, Rabbi Yochanan now has to say that it's talking about a case where it was originally a kerem gadol planted at the intervals of kerem cotton, and now the middle got burnt down, and in that case, the Churban HaKerem is okay, all right? But now, it's less severe than a kerem gadol which was planted originally at 16 amos, was originally planted at intervals at 8 amos, and now the middle row is destroyed. Then it's less severe. Whatever grows in between, as long as it is 4 amos from each side, is mutter b'di'evet. That's how Rabbi Yochanan has to learn our Mishnah. It's necessary for Rabbi Yochanan to learn our Mishnah that way. But it says more goes a step further. It says, I'll prove to you that this is the case. I'll prove to you even greater extent. How will I prove that to you to even greater extent? Let's think about the Mochel HaKerem. If we're talking about, if we're quoting Rabbi Yochanan, in a case where a classic large kerem, you have 16 amos between each row, right? The whole 16 amos is also. Then again, the logic dictates that in the 12 amos of the Mochel HaKerem, the whole thing is also as well. All those 12 amos should be also. There shouldn't be anything which is mutter in that case. Yet our Mishnah is saying that Mochel HaKerem is mutter. that mochel hakerem is mutter b'diavad, not chatchila. Chatchila, if it's less than 12 amos, you can't plant anything. But b'diavad, it's okay. If it's like Rabbi Yochanan, we're talking about like Rabbi Yochanan, in a keren gadol which is planted 16 amos across between each vine. So then there can't be. We can't say that the mochel hakerem is mutter b'diavad. Just like he holds that the 16 amos between each of the rows of vines is also in b'diavad, so too the 12 amos between the last row of vines and the wall should be also b'diavad. What is the only case in which it can be matir those 12 amos even b'diavad? Only a case where we're talking about a kerem gadol, which is planted at the intervals of kerem katan. Because then really, what's the really? It's not the full. Just like there, we say that where the middle row is chorav. So then anything more than 4 amos away from either the row of vines is mutter b'diavad. So too, in the mochel hakerem, that which is more than 4 amos away from the last row of vines is mutter b'diavad. Okay, that's what we're proving here. Again, by virtue of the fact that our Mishnah says that the mochel hakerem is mutter, it must be that the whole entire Mishnah is talking about a case, mutter b'diavad, must be talking about a case where we began with a vineyard, which although it has more than 3 rows, is planted at closer intervals than 8 amos, and then I can say, well, there's no area of 16 in this vineyard which is also, right? Since there's no usher area of 600 vineyards in usher, I do not have to say that the 12 of the mochel is usher either. And therefore, just like where it's chorav, anything between the two rows which still remain, as long as it's 4 amos distant from either row on each side, is mutter b'diavad. So too, in the same vineyard, anything which is more than 4 amos away from the row of vines, between the vines and the wall, is mutter b'diavad. Don't ask me to repeat that. I won't ask you to repeat that. That's what the Gemara says. Okay? It's on tape. You can chaz it over any time you want, or either that or we'll come back to it in 4 years. Let's go further. Boy, and a hard blot in Ida this morning, hard blot in Kilayim this afternoon. It's no rest for the weary. Okay? Again, in Tamar Mata Shechesrei out Shechesrei Tocho Aser. If you're going to say that between, there's talking about a case where it's a classic vineyard of 16, 16, 16, and the entire 16 is also umekadesh, and it's also even b'diavad, it's mekadesh, chutzulolo koshkein kavachomer, that the mochel should be also. Right? Certainly the mochel of 12 amos should be also. The only case in which we would say the mochel of 12 amos, that is long, whatever is more than 4 amos away from the vineyard is mutter b'diavad, is only a case where the interval between the vines, which are in the vineyard part, is less than 6 amos, is 8 amos. Rabbi Yossi said, Ein lokim elal ikar kerem. You should know, Rabbi Yossi says. This is a very radical approach here. Now, I'm learning not like the disciple's son, who says a different shot this morning. He says Rabbi Yossi's statement is connected to the previous Gemara. I'm learning it as a separate statement because it's much easier that way. Rabbi Yossi is saying there are 3 madregas. There's Aser, Aser Mekadesh, and Malchus. Aser is that which is Aser Midrabanan. Aser Mekadesh, it may also be Aser D'Rabbanan, but it's Aser Ba'anoah, right? In other words, Aser is Aser to do, but you have to do its mutter. Aser Mekadesh means Aser Ba'anoah. But what do you get Malchus for planting or eating? We actually take you out and flog you if you planted it, and flog you if you ate it. Only that which actually grows within, interspersed with the vineyards, with the vines. So that which is within the 4 amos of the vines, or of when it's a vineyard, or that which is in the 6 tvachim of a single vine, although it's aser umekadesh, you don't get malchus for it. What get malchus for? Only that which grows mamish intermingled together with the grapevines. Okay? So it says Rabbi Yossi, ein lokin elal ikar kerem, that which grows in the primary part of the vineyard. Which although as those types of sun doesn't say that pshat, I think is good pshat. Okay, let's just go a little bit further so we can catch up some ground. Another 5 minutes. Hamsakech is gafno agabi tvoser shel chaveiro. This is already a different issue. There's a Choshen Mishpat issue. Well, it's not. It's mixing Choshen Mishpat and Yer there. I have a vineyard next to your grain, and I make a canopy with my vines over your grain. According to Tanakama, I asked you your grain, and I have to pay you for it. Rabbi Yitzchak Shomer, I can't ask for your grain. It's only again the whole issue of Kilayim is all what I can do to my own grain. What I am allowing to happen, I can't do it to your grain. It's an amazing case. A guy went and he took his vineyard during Shemitah and he planted with grain. Chazal were matir it. He said it's okay. Why is it okay? Close? Well, yeah, maybe it doesn't mean you don't own it. And it almost a davar she'eino shelo, right? During Shemitah, you don't own the vineyards, you don't own the grain. It's all growing wild. It can't become usher. Only you can answer in that which you own. With your grapevines, you can answer your grain. But here you own nothing because it's Shemitah. Yes, but that's not Kilei HaKerem. That's right. So it says Lo tizor karmecha kilayim. Says how do we know that this is true? Because there's your vineyard, not yours, not the other guy's vineyard. That's only your kerem acher minayin. How do I know that nonetheless you're not allowed to? How do I? This is about where you have a goy. Not another Jews next to you, but a goy. How do you know you're not allowed to plant your vineyard so it forms a canopy over a goy's grain? Or it's over another Jew's grain, you can't ask for it. And therefore, there's not even an issue in the Torah Midoraisa. But what about a case where you have a goy next to you? So Gemara says in that case it's usher. You can't make a canopy of your grapevines over your neighbor goy's grain. Why not? What? I assume both. No, but he can't sell it. A Jew can't buy it. How do we know that that's true? So, kerem acher here meaning a goy, minayin. Tamlomar kerem v'lo kilayim. This is very ambiguous. The disciple's son said it means, since it says, Lo tizra karmecha kilayim. That means that your kerem shouldn't have kilayim in it, even if it's not your kilayim, even kilayim of a goy. So lo tizra karmecha kilayim means with somebody else's kilayim. Had it said kilayim lo tizra karmecha, then I would say that it's your kilayim. You can't plant in your vineyard. So it says lo tizra karmecha kilayim. It means that even somebody else's kilayim, you cannot mingle with your kerem. That can't be another Jews because rather it has to do with the goys. It's a little bit strange, but that's what the Gemara says. Okay? Says Rabbi Lezer said the Rabbi Meir. This is like Rabbi Meir. The Rabbi Meir that Rabbi Meir holds a goy doesn't have a kinner tzil to exempt it from meiser, so he can't exempt it from kilayim too. However, according to Rabbanon, that a goy's property is exempt from meiser, there's no kilayim in this case either. Why? Because it's like a piece of chutz la'aretz in Eretz Yisrael, and kilayim chutz la'aretz is only the Rabbanon this Gemara is learning. So they weren't goys there on a mingling of the grain of the goy with your grapevines. Says the Gemara, it's even going to Rabbanon. We're talking about a case where the goy planted his vineyard with kilayim and the Jew bought it from him. That the moment the Jew bought it from him, it becomes his, of course, and at that point it becomes also. Rabbi Yossi said, no, both it's going like Rabbi Meir, that even after a goy has possession of field, it doesn't become like chutzlarts, and therefore there's constant kilei kerem, where your field is adjacent to a goy's vineyard, or vice versa. We'll stop here for this evening. The more which discusses more that there's no kerem, mochel kerem by kerem cotton is not daf chofam. If